For the next hour, we're going to talk about what I call the 7-pillar developer. Let me frame it up this way. Do you envision a future where you could make 2x, 3x, 4x, 5x what you make today in a year? Do you envision a future where you could be independent, where you could work as much or as little as you want to? Do you envision a future where you don't have to work until 65 to retire? Do you envision a future where you say yes to the work that you want to do and no to the things that don't matter to you? Where you get up each day early because you're excited to contribute? That's the sales pitch for going big. That's the sales pitch for trying to be really good at what you do. If you get to that point, you have that level of opportunity, and that might be what someone might call success. But I recognize that that's a rather loaded term. Think right now. All right, count of 3, call it out. Who's the first person that you think of when it comes to success? Go. Yes! Oh, wow. John Kramer said my name. That was good pandering, sir. I did not even have that planned. Success is personal. Notice that people said all sorts of different names, and that means something. Success is about accomplishing an aim or purpose, and we all have different aims or purposes. Now, I can tell you, I am assuming that you're here because you want to be a better geek, right? So let's talk about how to get there. You're at a conference because we're all moving in some direction, and we're assuming Connect.Tech's going to help us move there more quickly. But my goal up here today is to change your trajectory. Conference has totally changed mine. And in fact, the fact that I'm up here today is crazy because I was the guy that was terrified at the idea of public speaking. Like, it sounded absurd to me, and that's precisely why I did it. And it changed my life. That was 10 years ago, and now I'm up here, and this is amazing. It is so cool to be up here. When you're thinking about how to live your life, Hunter S. Thompson says to look out for how you do this. He says, decide how you want to live and then see what you can do to make a living. That, I think, is super wise. So many of us get that in the wrong order, but if we can decide what we want our days to be like, then we can work back from that and say, so what should I do? For instance, for me, I want to learn every day. I want autonomy. I want to get up when I want to. I want to work when I want to. I want to travel when I want to. I want variety. Like, I love that I'm in Atlanta today. I'll be in LA next week. I'll be back home for a bit. I'll be in UK in January. Like, that's amazing. For me, that's living. I find that motivating. And I want to do work that I believe in. So my clients, I work in healthcare because I believe in healthcare. I work with insurance because I believe I don't want to lose all my money. Like, I know that these are useful tools in society, and I want to help others at scale. So that's why I teach, that's why I speak, that's why I record courses, and so on. So the things that I do, I consult, I blog, I author, I teach, I do training, I focus on React, but I really have this simple goal of helping developers be better developers. So that's the common thread through all of this. So this means that I travel to all sorts of places. My laptop, well, I take pictures of my laptop like it's a child because it fills in some slides here. It's fun. My laptop's been a lot of places. Yes, even at the beach, and it still works miraculously. So remote work, we all know that this is a reality, but I just encourage you, if you don't know what you want, experiment. That's how we find out. In this talk, it's titled 7 Pillars. We will not get through 7 pillars. I will tell you, I have 150 slides. We do not have time for that. I will get you out by 6 o'clock today, and we're drinking, whatever you want. Psychology is the first pillar, and this is key because psychology drives so much of this, and happiness is an advantage. There is a book called The Happiness Advantage, which I recommend. And increasingly, my hobby is to spot the silver lining. If you can find a way to look for the positive in all sorts of situations, it changes your life. And I will tell you, I have spent most of my life being a pessimist, but the last 10 years or so, after I read Happiness Advantage, I realized, well, man, I can foster the habit of being optimistic. And I've actually been around people that are that way. They have a gravitational pull. We are naturally drawn to people that are optimistic, and we're naturally repelled to people that are constantly complaining about things they can't control. So that is helpful. It's also helpful because we want to avoid cortisol. It screws all sorts of things up. Creativity and cooperation. It even messes up digestion. That's a problem. So the book Leaders Eat Last by Simon Sinek talks about happiness chemicals. If you want to increase happiness, there's 4 chemicals to keep in mind here. The first is endorphins. This is why I lift weights every day. Hopefully at some point you'll be able to tell. It hasn't caught on yet. I've only had 20 years, so we'll get there. I guess this is just who I am. Dopamine, completing a task. I am honestly addicted to this one. I love completing tasks like merging a pull request. Even after all these years, it still just feels fantastic. I'm like, oh, I accomplished something. That's going to production. Serotonin, helping others. I am happier today because hopefully this helps someone. Hopefully my talk I gave earlier today was helpful to some React developer. That's giving me serotonin. And finally, oxytocin, time with loved ones. And I even get this one today because, man, there's some people here that I really love. I mean, hanging out at conferences is also this feeling of, over time, I've made a lot of great friends here. The thing to watch out for is you can get addicted to every one of these chemicals. So watch out for over-indexing on them, because I'm being very candid. I'm definitely addicted to dopamine. I am so task-oriented, it's hard for me to relax. So one thing that I have been guilty of, though, is sometimes having unproductive free time. If you're going to waste time, waste it well. We tend to doom scroll. That term is a reference to real behavior. And the solution to that is to stop, get outside, go do one of these other things that we know will improve our happiness chemicals. As you progress in your career, you're going to have more and more opportunities. And I love what Derek Sivers says. His rule is hell yeah or no. And I had to hit this point at some point where I was going, okay, I had one year, back in 2018, I spoke at 17 conferences. And I have 3 kids. And at the time I had young kids. And my wife had had it. And it was justifiable. I was not home enough. I traveled, I think in the end that year, I traveled 70-ish days. It was absurd. Now, my career that year just rocketed. And in fact, I went independent that year. And ever since then, I love my work life, but I've also finally indexed on family more. So I now have this, I speak about 6 conferences a year now. I've got a much more reasonable cadence, but for a while I was certainly overdoing it, and that little rule is helpful. I'm going to skip past this because I want to talk about focus, which is the second pillar. So first pillar, out of the way. Second pillar, focus. You know who these people are because they focus. Serena Williams isn't out here trying to play a bunch of other sports and be pretty good at them too. As software developers, we're doing that all the time though. It's, I want to be really good at relational databases and I want to be great at the front end. I want to be awesome at DevOps. No, you can't do all those things. Here I am at the gym. Now, this is a study in contrast. Now, I just walked up to this guy, really nice guy, and I said, look, you're huge. How are you so huge compared to me? Because I see you here, and like I feel like I'm doing kind of the same exercises, but not getting the same results. Well, look at the differences, though. He works out 2 hours, 6 days a week. I don't. He eats 4 meals a day, and that 4th meal is him consuming chicken and potatoes to the point that he wants to get sick. It's like, I just have to do it. He forces himself. And he's got this strict diet, and because of that, his arms are bigger than my legs. Very impressive. But I point this out, like, all the time, there are all these people that are outliers that look amazing and that we look up to, but recognize they're paying a price that a lot of us would never be willing to pay. So watch out who you envy is really the point here. But also, focus matters. And we're at a conference right now. Today, there were probably 100 and some odd things that you heard or learned that you could go deeper on. And that's a problem because Batman isn't real. Bruce Wayne is somehow magically handsome and rich and fighting crime, and he gets the girl and lives in this amazing cave, and it's all fake. Like, you cannot actually be this. It's fun for us to watch these things and picture, oh man, what if I were able to drive the Lamborghini and the Batmobile and do it? But it's not real. Instead, what we have to do is aspire to be a cow, a purple cow. something that stands out. This is a statement from Seth Godin's book by the same title. And his goal is to say, be remarkable. Ask yourself how you can be remarkable. Jeff Atwood talks about this. He says, the most reliable path to success is becoming borderline obsessive about one thing. And that's me. Like, I have decided to go obsessive on doing front-end development in React. So I can say with a straight face, I'm really good at it. Now, there are people that are probably better than me, but I know that I'm in the top area. Like, it would be hard for me to get much better because of the amount of time that I spend on this one thing. But that does mean all the other stuff in software development, everybody else is better than me. Like, I don't have time to keep up with all the rest. I've got to lean on other smart people because I'm a specialist. So I'm weird, you're weird, that's great. Like, we have to embrace the weird. When I talk about weird though, like, look at all these different ways we can be weird as a developer. A front end versus back end versus ops versus focusing on accessibility. These are all different niche. And really, this is my way of being weird. I think about, I'm focused on React, in particular the web. I'm helping teams that are trying to transition into React, and also teams that are currently working in React but feel like they aren't moving fast enough or aren't delivering at a high enough quality. And that's why I talk about automated testing, and I talk about mocking, I talk about styling and fetching and APIs and performance. There's a lot to soak in with this Venn diagram there in the middle. But here is the key takeaway, and I want you to ask yourself, I'm going to put a question up here. Tell me, can you honestly answer this right now? How many of you can honestly answer this right now? I mean, there's a lot of people in here, and that's less than 5% of people say they can. And here's the thing. Even those of you who raised your hand, the real question is, can other people answer this? Because I guarantee you, anybody that knows me very well will say right away, Cory would answer React there. He's not just a developer. He's like the React guy. And I also want to say as a side note, that's not a tattoo. It's not permanent. It's the thing that I do at the moment. Before that, I was the knockout guy. And before that, I was also doing jQuery big, although there were lots of people big on jQuery, honestly. But this is the opportunity to get more reward by going bigger, and that is so powerful. I have recommended this book more than any book I have ever read, Essentialism. And I guess you could say that is the summary of this pillar, is asking yourself, what do I want to go big on? And we just saw in this room, there were, 6 people out of hundreds in here that were able to say, yes, I know what I want to be exceptional at. And the reason that this is really hard as developers is there are so many interesting little things that we could try to learn and do, but we really are going to have a hard time standing apart until we decide to put on blinders in some areas and go big on a few things. That's how Usain Bolt got where he is. Gary Vaynerchuk says, if you want to be an anomaly, you've got to act like one. And trust me, I have done a lot of things that make me an anomaly. Like my kids, for instance, have been embarrassed at times about how I've taken my laptop to the pool. And I'm going, well, I've got some things to get done. And I work from there, or I might even have it at a sporting event while we're waiting for things to start. I'm like, well, I got a little bit of code all right there. You have to be comfortable with being weird in some ways to get where you want to go. So this is why specialization is so important, because even though I told you I'm specialized in React, I've got all this junk up here that I need to know, and that is such a partial list. Such a partial list. And there's nothing up there that I feel like I know completely. I know it pretty well, but there's no destination, there's no finish line. And all of it also is moving every day. There was just a new release on 2 or 3 of these things that I've still got to go pick up on. So if you look at my history, and this is probably true of a lot of you, I could go back and I could say, here's all the stuff I know. But you know what? Nobody Googles for a guy that's worked in a lot of technology. That's not what people are looking for. What they're looking for is something specific. So let me share a little anecdote. Years ago, before I went independent, I had a full-time job, but I was trying to build an side consultancy doing training and consulting. So I put on my website, hey, I'm a general consultant. I come out here and I do training on coding practices and architecture and testing and so on. So basically, I was sort of marketing myself in a way that wasn't very effective. People just kind of saw me as just another developer. Then I realized, you know what? I need to niche down because people are going to look for something specific. Like if I've got an issue with my home entertainment system and the way that my home automation's working, I'm going to Google for like a home automation specialist in Kansas City because I happen to be from Kansas City. I'm not going to Google for handyman. No, I want the one that really knows home automation. So that was my epiphany here for going independent, was oddly niching down. And once I did that, I created this website, reactjsconsulting.com. I was lucky enough to get the domain, and I spent 15 bucks. It was just out there. This website, one domain for 15 bucks, has made me more money than anything that I've done before because it's brought in countless business over the years. The contrast, though, 2016, I had 3 companies, a whopping 3 companies reach out to me, and I completed 3 projects. Once I pivoted my technique to be a specialist and put up that website, that was in 2018 when I did so. I had 45 companies reach out to me that year, and I finished 15 projects. By the way, I had just went independent at that point. Like it was a ton of work. I actually had to quit my job because all of a sudden the stuff that I was doing on the side was, what do you know, I've got a full-time business now. That was such a contrast between before and the after. And to get there, when we talk about focus, it really requires this idea of 20,000 pecks. A woodpecker has to peck on a tree that many times just to get what it's looking for. If a woodpecker went around and pecked 1,000 times on a bunch of different trees, it would never get anywhere. You've got to dedicate for a while to really be effective. So I ask, what would people Google for if they were looking for you? That's a way to think about this. If you really want to try to build a funnel there. And I also recognize a lot of what I'm saying might sound like it's just for people that want to go independent. No, what I'm really saying, everything that I'm doing here actually increases the chances that you are going to have a broader luck surface area. In other words, more people will know what you're good at, and more people will want to offer you jobs, so you can switch jobs more often, or you can have more leverage in your current role. And this isn't about appearances, it's about focus. So that was pillar number 2. Pillar number 3 is education. Now, education is a really tricky issue here because knowledge doubles. 87 years, 63 years, 35 years. That's how long it takes for knowledge to double in these fields. In genetics, 32 years, and in JavaScript, about 10 months. So we've got a lot that we're up against here. An engineering degree has a half-life of 2.5 to 5 years. That means every 2.5 to 5 years, half of the knowledge that you learned in your engineering degree is now irrelevant. I think about this. When I went to school in college, 2002, 2003, like I was learning Visual Basic, I learned COBOL, I learned old legacy databases and stuff that I never even ended up using. All of it ended up feeling so old. So we have to embrace daily learning. One of my favorite books on this topic is a book called Mindset by Carol Dweck. And this has a simple concept in it. If we have a fixed mindset, we tend to think that if it's hard, then maybe it's not for me. Like, for example, I would say, I'm not good at public speaking. Well, that was just because I found it hard because I hadn't really done it. It's the same thing that people might say of, oh, I'm just not funny. Well, have you ever actually learned about comedy? Have you studied comedy to learn that there's actually science to the way that you tell a punchline, to the way that you set it up and maybe surprise someone in the end? So much about comedy is merely surprise. In a growth mindset, we say, if this is hard, then I need to keep pushing. I need to iterate. This is something that I emphasize to my kids all the time, is to have a growth mindset. And especially as a software developer, when I am failing, that's the sign that I'm actually learning here. If your job just involves constantly coding and coding and coding, and then you say it's done and you ship it, that means that you're not growing. Also, if you look back at code that you wrote a year ago and you're embarrassed by it, that's wonderful. That means you got better. Like, and I do this all the time. I'm like, what idiot wrote this? It's me. Great. Yeah. So we have to choose our focus. And I think about this idea in terms of a cycle. So let me talk about a virtuous cycle. In other words, something that makes things better over time. I believe that one of my core advantages is I care more than most people do about software development. And I also care more about the quality of what we produce as a team than most people do. And because I care more, I'm more dedicated. And because I'm more dedicated, my mastery goes up over time. And because my mastery has gone up over time, I have more trust. When I quit my last full-time job back in 2018-ish or so, I was principal engineer at Cox Automotive, which was the highest developer title that I could get there. And that was awesome. It was super cool. But the reason that that happened is because I'm really weird. And I recognize that. Like, I really care about my role. And I would stay late and I would get there early, and my boss knew that he could count on me to be weird in a good way. Like, the stuff that we shipped was high quality and consistent. And also, because of that trust, I got more and more autonomy. Did you know I had a full-time job and I was allowed to go to as many conferences as I wanted to without taking vacation? Because again, my boss said, I've seen you're still doing the work. Like, even though you're in another city and you're hanging out with friends, you're shipping good work every day and you're still interacting with the team. I was leading a team of 7 developers and traveling around the country and actually internationally at times too. That level of autonomy comes from caring a lot, which generated that trust. So that's the virtuous cycle that could happen there. Cal Newport wrote this book, So Good They Can't Ignore You. I would encourage you to write down this title. Go to YouTube and just Google for, well, go to YouTube and Google. Go to YouTube and search for So Good They Can't Ignore You. He does a short YouTube video that summarizes this book, but really, what he talks about is how telling young people to follow their passion is bad advice, which is counterintuitive, but I tend to agree. I will tell you, back in the early 2000s, I didn't want to be a software developer. I actually wanted to go into hardware. And I viewed software developers, I remember using the term code monkey. I was like, why would I want to be one of those? And then I became one. So I recognized, though, that once I started trying software development, I got good at it. And once I got good at it, it became part of my identity. And the better that I got at it, the more that I associated with it, and I became passionate over time. It's really hard to be passionate about something that you're bad at. And at first, everybody's bad. Like, we have to get good. To get good, though, we need to manicure our info stream, because the old world had this model of access to data was what gave you power. But now we're in this new world where we really have to know what to ignore. It is extremely difficult to ignore all of this stuff. But I ignore lots of things. For instance, I do not watch the news. And I'm quite happy that I don't watch the news, because the news is a whole bunch of things that I cannot control. So why would I go pay attention to a lot of frustrating things that I can't control? That doesn't make my life better. It doesn't help me help other people. And Sturgeon's law might apply here. Like, 90% of everything is crap. And that's not a very optimistic take, but what he's really getting at, like, you look around and you go, okay, how much of people will come up to me and say, how can you say you don't watch the news at all? Like, there's stuff on there you really do need to know. Well, you know what? The 10% I need to know, I can't help but know. Trust me, y'all, I found out that COVID happened, and I didn't even watch the news. It just, things happen. Like, people can't help but tell you about the big news because they're going to bring it up in conversation. Okay. Did you catch it? It was fast. You had to pay attention. So I have on my GitHub a AMA repository. And if you go there, you can ask me questions, and you can also go read questions that people have posted before. The reason that I do this is it helps people get this information, and it helps me reuse it all. Now, you also have to figure out how to learn. And there are lots of different ways to learn. I'm a big believer in paying people. So I will pay for good content, but also figure out how to teach yourself. There's lots of ways to do so. A good way is the Feynman technique, which says, I'm going to explain it like I'm talking to a 4-year-old. Like, imagine that you have to explain what a relational database is to a 4-year-old. That'll tell people whether you really know it. And I would say, okay, you know how you got this pile of baseball cards here? Imagine that I was able to create a tool that would let you find Bo Jackson's baseball card from 1980-something. I don't know what year. Okay. But you get what I'm saying. And then a child will go, oh, okay, that's pretty cool because I got all these baseball cards. You're saying a database would help me find that? That's explaining using the Feynman technique, like explain it simply. I also encourage learning in a logical order. It's often helpful to learn precursors before something else. And recognize that the internet is a gigantic haystack. So what you need is a way to find needles in the haystack. And every single day you go on the internet, you are probably stumbling across something that you're going to go, ooh, this is good. I might want to reference it later. You need a system for how to find that needle in the haystack later. For me, it is Evernote and GitHub. And the other thing I don't show up here is Twitter. I tweet out anything that I've come across that I find useful, and then later I just search Twitter to find, I remember I tweeted it at some point, so it's pretty easy to find that way. So have a system for holding on to those needles from the haystack, and you can put all sorts of stuff into Evernote. Okay, pillar number 4, image. So in other fields, they'll put an impressive diploma on the wall, but here, no degree is required. It can be useful, but it's certainly not required. In other fields, we dress up. We look really nice, so you look the part. Well, we have our uniforms too, you know, similar. Although honestly, this is more me working from home. You know, you can be as casual as you like. The hoodie does seem to be our call here. It is funny though that effectively there's this inverse relationship. Like if someone walks in for an interview and they're dressed in a tie, I'm like, oh, you sound desperate. You really should put on a t-shirt. You know, So I'm in favor of dressing strategically. As a side note, you'll notice today I am wearing a collar and I've even got like colored, like dark socks here. That is simply because it makes me feel more confident. That's it. Now at home, I will be in wind pants and t-shirts almost every day, and to the point that my wife is sick of it. She's like, could you ever not wear the same few things? But you got to decide on every given day. Do you want to dress for comfort or dress for power? Today I dressed because I wanted to feel more confident. Because I am who I think you think I am. In other words, my self-image is impacted by how I think you look at me. Like, this is one of the most powerful things about becoming a public speaker. The moment that you become a public speaker and you're up on stage, there's this presumption that, okay, well, at the moment, I'm up here speaking to people, so I must be worth listening to. Everybody didn't leave. Like, that's an objective fact right now, but that actually improves your confidence. It becomes, again, this feedback loop where you go, again, remember, I was the one that was so socially shy that, like, the thought of going to a mixer and talking to people just sounded terrifying. Like, to have to small talk with people sounded like, ugh. And now, it's one of my favorite things to do is go to conferences and hang out and visit. That was from getting up here and proving I'm going, if I'm the guy that can speak at a conference, I must be the guy that is not as maybe shy as I thought I was. If you can do all of this in public, then this will make you a much larger Lux service area. People will know what you are learning. They will see what you are writing. They'll listen to what you are speaking, and that improves your opportunities. Lots of ways to do this. Tweeting, LinkedIn, GitHub, blogging, Stack Overflow, going on podcasts, writing a book, writing videos, taking pictures of whatever you're doing. Hey, this is a nice reminder. I didn't want to forget this. Okay, everybody, I'm going to get back here because I'm trying to get everyone in. My mom's going to be so impressed. All right, hands up like we're on a roller coaster because that makes sense, right? I don't know why I started that. It just looks good in pictures. I'm sorry, y'all. Great. So I tend to tweet out pictures from when I speak because, again, you ever heard pics or it didn't happen? There's maybe some truth there. Now, you could say that everything that I'm doing here is about ego. Yeah, I mean, we all have ego, but this book is phenomenal. This broke me of a lot of the bad habits that I had about ego. What I realized after reading this book was there were a lot of things that I was worried about and doing because I wanted to impress other people. And all of us want to feel respected, but this book really opened my eyes. Like, I'm up here and I'm pushing because I really do want opportunity and I want to improve luck surface area. So these are some of the ways to do so. All right, let's move on to pillar number 5. Communication. It's rather important. I'm so tired of stereotypes of developers like nerdy and glasses and tape and not good communicators. And no, it's like we're all different people, but there is this stereotype which may have some level of truth. To improve communication, though, try to focus on one of Stephen Covey's rules, like seek first to understand. This is so useful. The sign of a good consultant is they just start asking questions and they say it depends a lot. I find as a consultant I do that all the time. And it's not me trying to punt on the answer. It's I want to know a lot of context before I answer, so you will hear me say that often. It's also really useful to get to the point that you are able to be a salesperson. Daniel Pink talks about this idea in To Sell is Human. He says we're all in the moving business. In other words, moving people's opinions and ideas to new areas. So I'm at work at any given day, working with other people, and I am selling them on a pattern or a practice or a technology, or I'm selling someone even, is my rate worth it? Whatever it may be. We're all in the moving business. We're all selling to some degree. So it pays to get better at it, and this is a great book on how to do so. Also, try to spend as little of your life as possible arguing. Now, that doesn't mean that you should avoid topics where people disagree with you. In fact, this is one of the wonderful things about conferences, is it puts you together with a bunch of people that have different experiences and different views and different ideas. I have had my views on politics and religion and technology and everything challenged, and all of my views on those topics have moved over time based on my interactions with people, because I am here to discuss, not argue. I'm here to ask questions. I'm here to understand other people, not try to push a particular win in a conversation. And I'm a believer that we should have more taboo conversations. Politics, religion, money, tabs versus spaces, you name it, yeah. It really is valuable. Like, it's bananas to me that we got a room full of people in here and we really have no idea how much money one person makes versus the other, and we're scared to have that whole conversation. Like, I am happy to talk money with people. Come up and talk money with me. Now, given this is going to be a quid pro quo, you got to talk money with me too. I want to know more about your side, because I don't think there's enough communication in that area, and I think more communication actually is helpful for us. I've got to share a story related to this. Years ago, I was still in a full-time job, but I was doing consulting on the side. And a friend of mine walked in, and he just asked me point blank, so what's your rate? And I said, I was really sheepish. Like, I thought that was very rude that he would ask such a thing. And I said, okay, $50 an hour is my development rate at the time. And he goes, oh, wow. And I said, what? What's yours? And he goes, $125 an hour. That's a thing? Like, you could charge over twice what I'm charging? That just sounded bananas to me. That opened my eyes, and literally a week later, I had an opportunity, and I quoted 125, and they said okay, and it just blew my mind. Like, that one conversation had completely changed my finances, because I went, well, if he can do it, I could too. Like, we had a similar amount of experience, and since then, I have laddered my rates up and up over time, and by laddering, I mean, here's how you keep a work-life balance as an independent. If I am bored, then I lower my rates so I can get enough work. If I am too busy, then I keep raising my rates until I'm no longer overwhelmed. So what has naturally happened was, over time, as I've gotten better and as more comes in, I just keep raising my rates to the point that I'm not overwhelmed. It's a simple technique. So back here on this argument versus discussion, an argument is when you decide who is right. A discussion is when you try to decide what is right. If you could think about it as you're having a conversation with somebody else, joined arm in arm, and you're looking at a whiteboard and you're trying to get to the solution together, that mentally is something that I think about sometimes, and I find it useful. I would also encourage you, this is going to sound super hypocritical, try to keep your identity small. I've been up here saying, I'm a React developer, I'm a React developer. Yes, it's what I work in, but it's not my identity. Let me assure you that the moment that I see an opportunity to work in something that is truly going to replace it at a level that is significant enough that I, as an independent, could use it day to day and find enough work, I will happily move on. It is not my identity, it's merely just my focus for the moment. I found this quote to be really helpful, just as a way to keep my mind open. I would encourage you, I already talked about this before, talk money, but not with coworkers. Like, for example, yeah, the coworkers thing hopefully speaks for itself. I'm not discussing that, but you're here around people that are not your coworkers. I want to share this. So I was at Cracker Barrel working in college, and I was making $2.50 an hour at the time. That's not actually me. My hair never looked that good. So I had very little sense of what money was, and I didn't have many people to talk to. I remember in college, the Chamber of Commerce, where I was going to school, asked me if I'd be willing to build their website. And I thought, that's amazing. I had just learned HTML, and I go, okay, yeah, I'd build that. And they said, they gave me some requirements, and they said, so what would you charge for that? And I just immediately blurted out $675. I don't know where the number came from. I don't know why that was a valid number, but I did oh wait, was it $675? Oh, it was $850. I just had to keep this. That's amazing. So my hourly rate, though, was not very good because it was 2 months of hard work, $650. I was not even in the ballpark. That may not surprise anyone, but at the time I wasn't aware of this thing called Agile or maybe feedback over time and iterations and so on. Tomorrow, I would like to make a challenge to you, and even tonight after we go out there, what if you walk up to a group of people that are in a circle? This is what's going to happen when we're done. We're all going to stand around, we're going to hold our drinks, and we're going to visit with whoever. What if you walk up to a group of people and said, hey, can I join the circle? Where are y'all from? What do you do? That sounded amazingly terrifying, like would never do it when I was younger, before I had started public speaking, and I just got used to it. And now I do this at lunch too. Like, I like to sit down at a table with people I don't know and just get to know others. It's a really good way to expand your horizons. Now, that said, my networking rule, I am not here to be manipulative. I'm here to hang out with people that I like. Like, if you're somebody that I hang out with a lot, trust me, it's just because I like your company. I'm not assuming I'm going to get anything out of the relationship. I like hanging out with, people I enjoy. So I have made genuine friends over the years. And I emphasize this because a lot of developers have this negative connotation of networking. If you can think about networking as I go to a conference and make new friends, that's a good mindset. Don't assume you're going to get anything out of any of these relationships. And honestly, the odd thing is that radically increases your chances that one day you will, because it makes you a real human. You're just enjoying people's company. And also, you're happy to hopefully help others as you can. My favorite book on this topic is How to Win Friends and Influence People. It is kind of a cheesy title, but man, it is useful. And if I were to say one of the key points that it makes in there is to be genuinely interested in people. That's it. Like, assume that everybody in this room could teach you something and ask some questions in a real way so that you can get to know more about them. Like, if you're genuinely interested, people can see that. I would also encourage you, if you want to improve your communication, speaking is a wonderful way to do so. Now, I'm up here speaking, and I'm not getting paid a dime to do so, so you might think, well, why would you go speak all over the country for free? Well, you do have to think about second-order effects. And second-order thinking is this idea of saying, I don't necessarily do something because of its direct effects. I do something because of its secondary effects. So speaking at a conference doesn't just give me a chance to stand on stage and yammer for a while. It gives me all these other benefits. It forces me to learn. It makes me feel more confident. I get to make new friends. I get into the conference for free. I often get free consulting from attendees who come up later. Like if I do a talk on React, people come up and they ask me questions, and then I can start talking about their environment and saying, was what I said up there, how did you feel about that? Do you handle it differently? And most of all, I get inspired being around other people that care enough about their career to go to a conference. Like we're already in the upper crust, just the fact that we end up caring that much, which is fantastic. If you decide to go into speaking, I will suggest start at your business, start at your job, do a lunch and learn, then go to a local meetup, then go to a code camp, then look into regional conferences. Finally, you can go look at international conferences. To give you a sense of how awesome this is, I took my wife to London for a conference. I flew for free. We had a hotel for free, food for free the whole time. I took my parents to the UK at one point. I've been multiple times overseas. It's so cool. If you want to travel, speaking is a ticket to get there. And also, public speaking is one of the most common fears. Like Jerry Seinfeld points this out, that the two most common fears in life are public speaking and death. So this means that if you were at a funeral and you were giving the eulogy, you would actually rather be in the ground. How is that logical? It's crazy. Now, I view speaking as an art, and I view software development as an art. I view writing courses as an art. And I've rarely looked back and been disappointed that I made that art. I have made mistakes. Even yesterday, I made mistakes in my session. I got negative feedback on my session. And my negative feedback was legit. Like, I should have seen it coming. I was just blind to something that people pointed out. But it didn't make me regret doing it. It was a learning experience. It made me better. Okay. We got 5 minutes before drinks, y'all. Hang with me. I love that 5 minutes left and the pillar is time. It's perfect. So people say we all have the same 24 hours in the day. Well, that is BS, because money buys time. The more money you have, the more time you can buy. And I have found this as I've made more money throughout my career, is I have a lot more time than most people now, because I don't have to mow the lawn, I don't have to clean the house, I don't have to do any handiwork. I can pay for the expensive lane when I'm anywhere that I can buy less traffic. I can pay for Ubers to take me places. I have sat in the back of Ubers so many times getting work done. I'm billing out in the back and I'm coming out ahead because I make more than what the Uber costs and I'm just coding back there. I can fly. That saves me time. I've paid for TSA pre-check. I have never done this though. That's sleeping on a plane. Isn't that awesome? That's a legit plane. Oh, I tell you what, Delta is behind. Yeah. I also auto-pay all my bills. This is another thing that buys me time. I don't have to think about any of it. It just happens automatically. So effectively, money ends up giving me mental bandwidth. I have bought mental bandwidth by doing all these things. I also don't have debt. Debt is another form of mental barrier. And now I recognize lots of people justifiably have debt. Being somebody who is debt-free in America is dang difficult. And I'm not saying that it was easy, but I am saying one of the ways that I did that was every time I made more money, I just saved it. That's it. I drive a 13-year-old car with lots of miles on it, and I love cars, but I just haven't upgraded it because what I wanted more was freedom and low stress, and I wanted to make sure that I could go independent and not worry about money. I have a form of futuropia, like I'm very future-oriented. You can take this too far, but there is a benefit to it because it tends to improve your behavior in the moment. Okay, I'm going to breeze ahead for a second. I want to make sure we get to this. Every one of us have these 7 facets of life: family, health, job, recreation, religion, self-development. Here's the sad truth. If you want to be really good, if you want to stand out, then you're going to have to nearly completely ignore some of these. And you have to decide which of those you want to optimize on and which you don't. And I say that, like, that sounds really controversial, but start thinking about all the people that you know that are amazing at what they do, and then look at those 7 things and ask, are they balanced? Are they actually doing all those 7 things well? Like, there are countless examples of people who have had amazing careers and horrible family relationships. I don't want to be that person. Like, I have definitely rebalanced my life because, like, my marriage was in bad shape when I was traveling too much. And we're in a much better place now because I've found balance. Okay, so it's almost 6. I'm going to hit escape so I can jump to the end of this. I will tell you the 7th pillar is systems. And I would encourage you to think in systems rather than goals. This is a principle that came out of Scott Adams' book, How to Fail at Almost Everything and Still Win Big. Now, Scott Adams is somebody whose stock has fallen a lot over the years, but I will tell you, this book is fantastic. I would encourage you to read it. The reason I say his stock has fallen, he's just politically, he's frustrated a lot of people. So depending on how you feel about politics, you may like him more or may like him less, but I will say this book, though, I would really say was one of the best books I ever read because of its systems versus goals idea. And if you want to have success, you effectively need to define what it means to you, figure out the price, and then pay it. Now, I want to share, though, over a 6-year period in my career, I did 33 unique talks. I went to 50 conferences. I presented 135 sessions. I wrote 50 blog posts, did 50 podcasts. I published 9 courses on Pluralsight, and did 30 hours of programming videos. Like, this is absurd when I look back at it. This is not my life today, but there was a time that my pace was at that level. And now I have the opportunity to have a more reasonable life, but I was completely unbalanced at this point. And I'm not up here suggesting that that's how you should live your life. This is unhealthy, and it led to problems in my personal life. The reason that I show you this is as a cautionary tale that anytime that you look at someone who has been successful, what you don't often see is the price that they paid behind the scenes, and sometimes it is severe. Like, you don't say you want to be in someone else's shoes until you've seen that whole story. I traveled for 74 days to 27 cities in 4 countries. I didn't watch any TV or sports or news or games. I hardly ever saw my friends and family. 6 months of nights and weekends trying to do this while I had a full-time job. Now, the result is lots of people watch my courses. I have a successful business, so good things came out of it, but it's hard to say whether I actually made just a horrible mistake. Like, the results worked out okay because I dodged losing my family over it, but Steve Martin's book, I love this book. Get the audiobook, and what you will realize is the amount of work that he put in to become one of the best-known comedians in the world was crazy. He was doing stand-up comedy to completely empty crowds, like nobody there, just again and again, day after day. All right, it's 6 o'clock. I'm a man of my word, so here, let me wrap it with this. I would like to encourage you to add one thing to your calendar right now. Like, I just listed a lot of things you could do. There's lots of things you could. I put some things over there on the right. I also have shared a link down here to a GitHub repo. If you would like to see a book on this topic, because I've only scratched the surface, I am considering authoring a book called The 7-Pillar Developer. I've been working on it for a while. If you go to that URL, you can sign up for the mailing list, and I'll let you know when I finally finish it. I'd love to hear your feedback on these things. I have courses on Pluralsight, and this one in particular is related to the talk I gave today. It's a careers talk. And again, I would just encourage you to think about, we all know success is personal, so ask, what does success mean to me, and what do I want to go big on? You can find me on Twitter at HouseCore. My courses are on Pluralsight. My consultancy is at reactjsconsulting.com. You all, let's drink. Have a great night, everybody. Thank you.